All right, picture this with me. Because if you were watching Sunday night like I was, you felt it in your chest. A slow, sickening collapse that didn't look like a fluke. It looked structural. It looked inevitable. I'm talking to you as a Browns fan and as someone who studies this game. Film, decisions, personalities. And I want to be blunt. What we watched in Pittsburgh wasn't just a bad game. It wasn't a rough quarter or a fluke stat line. It was a systemic meltdown broadcast in prime time. And the man most folks are pointing to, rightly or wrongly, is Dylan Gabriel. Listen, I get the impulse to be clinical, to parse the box score and find nuance. But the box score here isn't a nuance. It's a scream. 50 pass attempts. Read that again in your head. 50. That's desperation. That's an offense that opted to force-feed a failing plan for an entire night. 50 throws and you come away with barely 220 yards. No touchdowns, no explosive plays, no leadership moments that change the tone of a game. On paper, a completion percentage might look respectable. On the field, what we saw was a string of checkdowns, 3-yard conversions on 3rd and long, and a quarterback who shrank every time the coverage said, "Throw." This is not nitpicking. This is how drives die.
Tired of boring phone cases? Here's your chance. My Etsy shop is packed with exclusive designs that let you show off your team pride in style. And the best part? You'll unlock discounts when you hit favorite, more savings when you add to cart, and even surprise discounts on your second purchase. Don't wait. Click the link in the description and grab your favorite now.
And the way Pittsburgh played it was almost tauntingly simple. They dared Cleveland to throw downfield. They showed soft safety looks and said, "Beat us." The intermediate window was there repeatedly. Receivers got open in rhythm. Yet the ball never traveled beyond 15 yards with conviction. Gabriel repeatedly chose the safe route, the dump-off, the conservative completion, and in doing so, surrendered every chance to sustain momentum. By the fourth quarter, there were literal shots of Steelers defenders smiling between plays. I'm not doing theater here. I paused the tape and I saw it. There was a level of public mocking from the other sideline that you very rarely get at the NFL level, and it's only because the offense gave them permission. I've been on message boards. I've read the hot takes. I've sat through the memes. They arrived within minutes. Social media went from stunned to savage. GIFs, Photoshop jobs, trade mockery, even comparisons to long-retired QBs where the punchline somehow favored Brandon Weeden. A single viral post blew up with tens of thousands of likes demanding change. Fans weren't just angry. They were organizing, rallying, and demanding accountability. That doesn't happen in a vacuum, and yes, national voices piled on. You could hear the same questions on major shows. Why sit an obviously superior talent on the bench? Why leave a team's best chance to win idle while results like this pile up? I'll be honest with you, I've watched Shedeur since college. I've watched the mechanics, the arm, the way he steps into throws. In practice reports and in glimpses, the contrast between him and what we saw on Sunday is impossible to ignore. Teammates have noticed it. The vibe in the locker room, and I'm speaking from sources who are inside the building, is tense. There are veteran players frustrated that their effort up front is undone by a quarterback not taking advantage of time and space. I've heard a receiver ask, in private, "Why am I running deep if he won't throw deep?" That question cuts to the heart of this offense. Let's also be fair and look at the defense, because this is what makes the whole thing stinging. Cleveland's defense showed up. They played the kind of game that earns you a chance to win. Turnovers, pressure, discipline, and fewer than 20 points allowed against a division rival. They gave the offense short fields and hope. But hope is useless if the offense decides to play it safe for an entire night. That disconnect? One unit pouring out blood and the other refusing to capitalize. Breeds resentment. I heard about a heated exchange after the game. Teammates had to intervene. Coach Stefanski downplayed it publicly, but inside, the temperature is rising. Now let's address the coaching decision, because this is where the organizational philosophy becomes the story. Whether you call it loyalty, draft capital defensiveness, or plain stubbornness, the choice to stick with Gabriel despite consistent warning signs is a decision with consequences. The definition of insanity, doing the same thing and expecting different results, is a cliché for a reason. If a player's limitations are glaring and proven against NFL defenses, you don't double down and hope for a miracle. You adjust. You create a path forward. You start the guy who gives you the best chance. That's head coaching 101. I don't blame a coach for being reluctant to make a change mid-season. I do, however, blame a coach for failing to adapt when evidence keeps accumulating. The optics of refusing to play a clear upside option when the team is bleeding is catastrophic. It erodes trust in the locker room, among fans, and across the league. Coaches get judged by how quickly they solve problems. Right now, the Browns' problem is obvious, and the clock is merciless. You also can't ignore the larger narrative effect. This was supposed to be a season of momentum. Preseason chatter had Cleveland in the conversation for a playoff push. Now, the national narrative flipped overnight from contender to questionable, from promising roster construction to organizational dysfunction. That's painful because it's not just the players on the field who lose. It's the entire city's expectations. Fans who dared to dream now feel like they're being punished for hope. And let's be real about the sunk cost fallacy playing out here. The team invested draft capital and public commitment in Gabriel. Once you declare publicly that you believe in a player, economically and culturally, reversing course is awkward. But the alternative to acknowledging a mistake is repeating it, throwing good resources after bad and letting a season evaporate. That's the riskiest, most expensive path. So where does that leave us? The fanbase has spoken in the clamor of Twitter and the steady drumbeat of local podcasts. Start the quarterback who gives you the better chance. Teammates have reportedly voiced it quietly. Even some coaches and position coaches behind closed doors see the difference. At some point, the front office must weigh the short-term humiliation of changing course against the long-term cost of continuing a proven losing trend. I want to be clear. This isn't a call for chaos or for reckless decisions. It's a call for common sense. Play your best chance to win. Protect the locker room. Stop letting pride make roster decisions for you. The division is closing. Rivals are smelling blood. The playoff window's not patient. Every start for a struggling quarterback chips away at credibility and at the season. I'll close like I always do. Emotions run high in Cleveland. They should. This city deserves better than a spectacle where a defense's greatness is squandered, where teammates are publicly embarrassed, and where the fans are left to console themselves with memes at 2 a.m. The fix is obvious. It's uncomfortable to admit mistakes in public. It's an organizational humility test. But the Browns have everything they need around quarterback to be competitive. What they need now is the bravery to do what's right. Give their best chance to win a real shot. If you're a Browns fan, you felt that hurt on Sunday. If you're a neutral, you saw the carnage and the questions it raises about leadership. And if you're in the front office or on that coaching staff reading this, I'll say it plainly. Do the hard thing before the hard thing happens to you. Start the player who gives this team a pulse. Stop letting a season slip away because of stubbornness. Cleveland's season, and a whole city's hope, is on the clock. Andrew Berry stood there behind the podium with that calm corporate tone, and Kevin Stefanski echoed every word like a robot reading cue cards. They looked confident, calculated, and so sure of themselves. But that confidence, that smug certainty, it just blew up in their faces. Because what happened on Sunday against Pittsburgh wasn't just a bad game. It was an organizational implosion live on national television. It wasn't just a team losing. It was a franchise unraveling in front of the entire country. The cameras told the whole story. You couldn't miss it. Rows and rows of empty orange seats. A sea of absence where the heart of this fan base used to be. The broadcast crew even mentioned it, talking about the attendance crisis during the game. Think about that. A rivalry game against the Steelers, one of the biggest matchups of the year. and the stadium looked like a preseason scrimmage in August. That's not apathy. That's protest. That's pain. And get this. I've talked to people who know what's going on behind the scenes, and they're saying Browns ownership actually asked the networks not to show the crowd. They didn't want those shots of empty seats broadcast across the country. But the networks ignored it, because sometimes reality just speaks louder than PR spin. You can't hide what that stadium looked like. You can't cover up the truth that this fan base is checking out. We're not talking about casual fans losing patience. This isn't some rebuilding fatigue. This is full-blown rebellion. Fans are boycotting, walking away, saying if Shedeur's gone, so am I. And you can see it in the numbers. Tickets that used to cost $380 were going for $35. $35 for a divisional game against Pittsburgh. Premium club seats dropping from nearly $300 to under $60. Upper decks being handed away through promos. And even with those ridiculous discounts, the place still looked empty. Season ticket holders are dumping their seats for pennies on the dollar. Not because they need the cash, but because they're cutting emotional ties. They're done being strung along. One executive told me point blank, this isn't a market correction. This is demand collapse. Cleveland's fan base is sending the loudest message possible, and it's echoing through every level of this organization. And then there's the football itself. My God, it was brutal. The Browns' offense looked lifeless from the first snap. 3 plays, negative yardage, punt. Next drive, penalty, sack, incompletion, punt. Then a fumbled exchange, desperation throw, interception. It was like watching a slow-motion car crash. They had 50 yards in the entire first half. 50 yards! Against a Steelers defense that wasn't even doing anything exotic. No fancy blitzes, no disguise coverages. Just basic football. And Cleveland still couldn't function. And you could feel it. Without Shedeur, there's no energy, no leadership, no pulse. Whoever they trotted out there at quarterback looked completely overwhelmed. Missing reads. Panicking in clean pockets. Scrambling into pressure. Throwing off balance. Everything fundamental that defines competent football. Broken. And that's the word that kept echoing in my head, watching it all. Broken. Meanwhile, the Steelers looked exactly how the Browns should look. Efficient, organized, professional. Nothing flashy, just clean execution. And even Troy Aikman called it out mid-broadcast. I'm watching professional football players who look completely lost, he said. That's not some random hot take from Twitter. That's a Hall of Fame quarterback diagnosing a team that's fallen apart. The final score, 31-3. 1 field goal, and that only came after a Steelers turnover deep in their own territory. The Browns didn't cross midfield once in the second half. 1 third down conversion. 4 turnovers, 134 total yards. These aren't bad stats. They're historical embarrassments. And all of it traces back to one decision. Letting Shedeur Sanders walk. Because here's the truth. Shedeur wasn't just a quarterback. He was the Cleveland Browns. He was the brand, the storyline, the identity. He made them relevant. His presence electrified fans, packed stadiums, sold jerseys, drew TV audiences. Without him, this franchise has no heartbeat. And the fans know it. Social media exploded within minutes of the final whistle. We Want Shedeur was trending nationally. Photos of empty seats flooded timelines. Fire Stefanski dominated the night, but this wasn't just online rage. This was emotional devastation from a fan base that's finally had enough. One viral comment said it perfectly. I paid to watch Sanders. If he's gone, I'm gone too. That post had tens of thousands of likes. And judging by those empty seats, that's not just talk. Another video went viral showing fans burning their own Browns jerseys. Not the opponents, their own. Chanting Shedeur or nothing. That's not fandom. That's heartbreak turned into fury, and you could feel that pain spilling everywhere. Fan forums filled with lifelong supporters saying they've cancelled season tickets. People writing emotional posts about walking away after decades. One that hit me hard said, "My grandfather took me to Municipal Stadium in '87. My dad never missed a home game for 20 years. I've had tickets since 2006. Today I cancelled. I'm done." You can't read that and not feel something. Even national media jumped in. ESPN went in hard. Dan Orlovsky said flat out, this was organizational malpractice. Stephen A. Smith gave one of his all-time passionate rants. You had your franchise quarterback. You had your future. You threw it away because of ego. Now look at your stadium, empty. Look at your offense, pathetic. And he's right. Everything he said, brutal as it was, hit the mark. Then you had Terry Bradshaw on Fox saying it was one of the worst decisions he's seen in 50 years. And he's right too, because those empty seats don't lie. That's the people of Cleveland voting with their absence. And while all this chaos unfolds, Shedeur Sanders himself stays silent. Not one bitter post, not one petty comment, just training clips, motivational captions, focus. Meanwhile, his name keeps trending, his brand keeps growing. Jersey sales are still insane. Let that sink in. Sanders' Browns jerseys are still outselling every current Browns player combined. Fans are buying them like a memorial to what could have been. I even heard from a retail exec who said, "I've never seen anything like this. People are buying jerseys of a player who isn't even on the roster." As protest. That's not just sad. That's historically significant. And if you thought the attendance crisis was bad, look at the TV ratings. This rivalry game, usually one of the biggest of the year, posted its lowest viewership in 19 years. Cleveland's local ratings dropped 38%. National audience down 27%. Networks are furious because their advertisers expected fireworks. Instead, they got a ghost town. And now ownership is panicking. Emergency meetings, consultants, finger-pointing, everyone blaming everyone else. Sponsors calling to discuss partnerships. Local businesses complaining about game day revenue losses. This is more than a football failure. It's an economic collapse. Financial analysts estimate over $40 million in lost revenue this season, directly tied to fan backlash over Shedeur. And every Sunday, those empty seats keep telling the same story. The Browns didn't just lose a quarterback. They lost their identity. They lost the one thing giving fans a reason to believe again. Inside that locker room, it's toxic. Veterans avoiding interviews, young players shell-shocked, everyone pretending not to think about the obvious. And then you get that one anonymous quote. "We know what everyone's thinking. We're thinking it too. This didn't have to happen." That line right there, that's the soul of this whole collapse. Because make no mistake, this is organizational rot. Stefanski's credibility is gone. Barry looks lost. Haslam's interference has created chaos. Nobody's steering this ship anymore. And the rest of the league sees it. Free agents see it. Draft prospects see it. Everyone sees it. Cleveland has become the cautionary tale of what happens when ego outweighs vision. And I say this as someone who cares about this franchise. This hurts. Browns fans deserve better. This city has bled orange and brown through decades of heartbreak. They've been patient, loyal, passionate beyond belief. And this organization repays them with arrogance, dysfunction, and failure. They had everything right in front of them. The quarterback, the excitement, the hope, the story. And they threw it all away. Now they're living in the aftermath. Empty seats, angry fans, national embarrassment, the conclusion's already written. The Browns chose control over connection. They chose politics over talent. And every week, those thousands of empty seats will keep screaming the truth they don't want to hear. You let your future walk out the door, and you're paying the price for it every single Sunday.